when you can look at them as the blessing that they really are, no matter how horrific it is, if you can go, this is what made me become this, that's when that Ophiuchian energy comes out and says, okay, you're off that karmic wheel. You're looking at the big picture, because now you can take those wounds and go, how can I serve?
Hello, amazing starseeds. Welcome to the second episode of Pluto and Capricorn with me, Chiron Phoenix. In this episode of Pluto and Capricorn, Brenda Martinez of Ophiuchus 13 Astrology and Soul Deep Life shares her journey of self-discovery and the development of her spiritual gifts. It began with a dream about a snake. This dream marked the beginning of her realization of her gifts, starting with Reiki, and then various modalities such as emotional bodywork and reading the Akashic records. In this interview, Brenda emphasizes the importance of facing and transmuting our fears and working with our wounds, and how doing that can lead to empowerment and healing. We discuss her work with the Akashic records, dragons, and the importance of looking at astrology from a holistic perspective. Now, Brenda has an amazing energy and has a very authentic approach to her work. Please make sure to check the links below to find her on social media and to visit her website to work with her. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Your support means so much to me and for the awakening of the collective. I want you to please forgive my imperfect audio recordings, as I am still getting this system down that I'm using. Now, without further ado, here is Brenda Martinez on Pluto and Capricorn. We were just talking about this dream that you had that kind of led into where you're at and what you're doing. So if you could just recap that one more time for us so we can talk about that some more.
Sure. So it was long before I even realized I had gifts. I've had them all my life, but it's one of those, it was so much a part of me that I didn't have the awareness of it. And dreams had always played a big part of kind of my, I don't know, just kind of who I was and how information came to me. And I was going through a transition in my life that I knew was going to change me, but I wasn't quite sure where I was going. And all of a sudden I started having dreams about snakes. They would just randomly pop up in my dream. And, of course, as soon as they did, I'd wake up. And I've always been a pretty lucid dreamer, so I knew I was dreaming. And they started happening like over and over and over and over. And it came to the point that I just was accepting that the snake was a part of my dream. And the very last dream that I had about snake, I was in a cave and there was some foliage. I can see it clear as day, just like boom, I'm right back there. And the snake came out from around the corner. She was huge, kind of white. And I know it was a he. It was male energy, and a little bit of black on it, kind of black around the mouth, and very vivid eyes. And he came around the rock, crawled across to me, up my body, onto my right arm, and I watched as he wrapped around, and we looked eye to eye as his fangs went into my forehead.
So that's intense.
We sat there for the longest time just looking at each other in the eye. I mean, it was like slow motion. As the fangs went into my skin, I could see the indentation of my skin, and then I could see the fangs into my skin, and then I could see the fangs all the way in my arm. And I never broke contact with his eyes. And then it was done, and I never had another dream like that again. It was
Sure.
the
Like
process was
the
complete.
total transfer of energy was completed, or the seed was planted there, or the venom was injected there, or the medicine was injected there.
And I think, after analyzing it, it was understanding that not only facing your fears, but taking that poison, facing it, and transmuting it into something beautiful, which turned out to be 20 some odd years later.
So where in those 20 years after that, having that dream, did you start realizing that you had these gifts to see or to hear and to do the things that you do? And what are some of those things?
It started with Reiki, actually, and that was actually along the lines of that same time that I was introduced to Reiki. I was single mom, working at a bar as bartender, actually sitting down at the bar stool one afternoon after work and having a drink, and a girl came in. A small town, so everybody knows you whether you know them or not. And she just, like, there was nobody else in the restaurant. The place was full, but she beelined to me, telling me that she had just finished her Reiki class. And I'm looking at her like, what did you just say to me? And why do I know this? And she put her hands on me, and I felt that energy from the top of my head down to the bottom of my feet. And it was like, wait, what? And she said it again, and then off she went. To this day, I can't tell you who she was. I have no idea who this person was. I don't even know that I ever saw her again. Fast forward about 10, 11 years after that, I'm with my now love of my life husband. And I was now at a corporate job, bored out of my gourd, going, what am I going to do with my life? Reiki popped into my head. Just, boom, one of those meant to be kind of things. And without ever having a session, without ever having it done on me, other than that one time that she went, hello, I went and learned how to do it. And I instantly knew that that was something that was a calling. And because of it, it helped me open up to and realize that what I had was gifts. All my life, I'd known things. I'd lived my life just with this knowing, and without really learning how to ask questions. I just followed my intuition and discovered that actually has a name. And I felt bad for my kids because I raised them thinking that they knew things that they didn't know. Like, not everybody goes around their whole life not knowing things. That's a thing. And once I started opening that, then the clairvoyance really came in. I have a very clear seeing. So my clear knowing and the clear seeing just became two as one. And it introduced me into so many different things. From there, I went into reading the Akashic records and decided to open a business. I thought years before I opened my business, but I didn't really open my business until, gosh, I want to say 2013, somewhere around in there is when I really got serious about, hey, this is what I want to do with my life. And the Akashic stuff just kind of went gangbusters. I was doing reading after reading after reading for months, and then all of a sudden it stopped. And I was like, okay, there must be something new coming in. So I started networking and met a gentleman at a networking meeting that was looking for people to teach a new kind of astrology. And I studied with him for about 6 years, and maybe 5, somewhere around in there. Discovered that as much as I was learning, I was being held back, because as soon as I learned something, then I was told it wasn't what I learned. And I went, okay, peace out. And then one of the colleagues that I was in there learning with, her and I came across Ophiuchus and Chiron. And I can't even explain to you the energy that I felt when I heard about Ophiuchus. It was almost the exact kind of feeling that I had when I had that Reiki. The top of my head down to the bottom. It was like this ancestral knowing that, yeah, this is something big, and people
That sounds
know about.
very much like my same experience when I found out about Ophiuchus, and which was right after finding out about sidereal astrology and realizing that, wait a second, you mean Western astrology doesn't actually use the sky that we're looking at? Like, how is that possible? And then that led me down a whole rabbit hole of research, learning history, and I was like, wait a second, this is all wrong. And this is right, like, I think maybe 2 or 3 months after got this tattoo that I had showed you of this sea goat Capricorn on my arm, and found out, well, wait, I'm not a Capricorn sun sign. And it made so much more sense. And I kind of had that realization and saw this Ophiuchus energy, and I saw it kind of as this like rising of serpent knowledge in a way, just because of the research that I had been doing in ancient civilizations about serpent energy and Sophia wisdom and all this stuff. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is huge. Like, this is very, very important. And why don't people know this? And that led me down another rabbit hole.
Right. Well, I was lucky enough with the gentleman that was teaching this astrology was sidereal, and it was his realization that, when he was looking, because he was also doing some astronomy stuff, and went to look at, I don't know, like a Cancer moon, and realized that it was actually a Gemini moon. And it was like, wait, if this is this much off, then how come we're talking like this? So what way I was taught was sidereal, only it was with even houses.
Not really true sky.
Yeah. Then as soon as I discovered that you can have uneven houses, the actual size of what's in the sky, and then putting, I'm actually listening to a book right now about Chiron. Ophiuchus and I, like I said, I think between the snake dream, coming to here in understanding snake energy is one thing, and then adding the Chiron element to it makes so much sense. I've heard arguments for Sagittarius. I've heard arguments for Virgo. In my heart of hearts, I feel Ophiuchus makes
absolutely
so much sense.
And I feel that the same way. And to me, it kind of makes sense knowing the Greek mythology behind it also. And like they're tied together. If Ophiuchus is also Asclepius, well, okay, then there's our connection. That's where the two connect. And that makes so much sense to me, because it was Chiron that helped Asclepius figure out how to heal and how to do it. He was his teacher. And it's like, well, okay, well, your teacher's kind of the ruler in a way of you, is the one that's passing on the knowledge to you and is empowering you. So it's like, okay, so it makes sense for Chiron to be the ruler of Ophiuchus. It just logically kind of ties together.
I love what you just said, and that just gives me, it's a conversation that I've had with a couple of people on my site about the whole ruler thing, and the going to the patriarch part of it, and how the Romans put all of this into to kind of keep us in this karmic will. But what you just said was empowerment. It's a leader. It's showing you the way. It's not that it's ruling you like dictatorship. It's the planets as a ruler are a teacher. They're a guide that helps us be empowered to become the next thing, into that evolution of who our soul really is. And my business name is Soul Deep Life for that very reason, is that we are so much more than this flesh and bone in this 3D reality that we happen to be hanging out in. When you start exploring the different dimensions and different past, future, timeline type of stuff, and really look at the big picture of it, the energetics of what we look at in astrology is just that. It's energetic. It's much more fluid, I think, than the rigidity that
completely energetics. And so much, I've heard so many times, like, we get caught in the nomenclature. Like, I even get caught in calling it ruler. But when I say that, I mean exactly like you just explained. It's the thing that empowers it. It's the thing that gives it its energy, and it gives it all of its energetics. It's what makes it kind of come to life and in its full glory. So that's kind of how I see, all the different rulers of the different signs, is that they are the empowerers. They're the thing that's there to kind of give it that extra spark. It makes a big difference. And when you say energy, I also start thinking about how I've had conversations with people about astrology, and they say, well, it's not possible for these stars way off, light years away from us, and these planets that are, way far away to have any effect on us. And I go, well, have you looked into quantum physics?
I love quantum physics.
And it's like, have
Yeah,
you looked into
right.
entanglement and how that works and what's possible with that? And that distance is not really, I mean, it's a thing, but when it comes to quantum energy and quantum entanglement, distance has no effect whatsoever. Distance is irrelevant. It doesn't matter how far away it is.
Right.
The effect can still be felt faster than the speed of light. And I say that's why the energetics of astrology is real. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, it seems like that's what's going on.
And then, when you really go down that rabbit hole, it's not something that I embraced heavily, even 4 or 5 years ago, but the concept of time is a planetary thing. This 3D reality, we need time to understand the increments. But when you put that energetic part into it, when you become that energetic being, that soul light being, there is no time. There is no past, present, future. It's all happening now. And that's why when if you have someone's do some type of clearing, it's clearing past, present, future. It's when you're buying into that type of thing, it works across all dimensions.
So when you're doing clearing, so now is that in your Reiki practice that you're doing? Is that part of that, or is that somewhere else for you?
So it's funny. I've been kind of in this realm for better part of 16 years now, and I'm at a point that it's all kind of blending and becoming a part of, my astrology bleeds into my Reiki, and my Reiki bleeds into my emotion body work, and my emotion body work bleeds into my Akashic work. And so when I do a clearing, it's generally when I'm doing an emotional body release. I also do it during the Akashic stuff, but it happens during Reiki sometimes just instantly without me having to consciously facilitate it other than my initial intention. And I think intention is huge. I need to put that out there as far as me becoming who I've become. The more intentional I am with what I do and what I want and why I'm doing it, the better the work becomes and the more impactful it becomes.
I keep going back to that energy. That's the energy that your thought vibration's putting out that starts to go into your body, and your body is probably generating an aura at that time when you're doing that and interacting with the people that you're working with, and just doing so many of those different energetic level things that we can't necessarily visually experience, but in our actual energetic body, we can experience that. So it seems like you have a more holistic approach to it now is what's developing. It's kind of all merging into a holistic approach, and that's a beautiful thing, because that's really where we get the most healing at. And that's, again, kind of embracing that Ophiuchus, Chiron, serpent energy, all that kind of that healing energy.
Yeah. I used to be, it's funny how we evolve. And I think back, I don't know, again, 5, 6 years ago, being the person that just thought you had to have all of this positivity out there. I come from a very law of attraction background. And over time, especially doing the emotional work, realizing that having the shadows, the reason that we're here in this 3D reality is because there is contrast. And if you don't look at the dark with the light, you don't have contrast. And that's why Chiron is so key to Ophiuchus. You have this wound that, for me, is when I do a reading, that's the first place I look is Chiron. What is the deepest core wound that this soul brings into this lifetime? Who are the players in that wound? How have you played with that wound as a child and young adult? And then how does it turn into the dharmic part of where Chiron ends up, where Ophiuchus ends up saying, this is what your ultimate purpose is. Because when you take those wounds, when you take those default kind of back behaviors of those wounds, of, the things that we experience of kids as young adults, and even into our adulthood, the shadows, the dark side that comes out, when you can look at them as the blessing that they really are, no matter how horrific it is, if you can go, this is what made me become this, that's when that Ophiuchian energy comes out and says, okay, you're off that karmic wheel. You're looking at the big picture, because now you can take those wounds and go, how can I serve? How can I be of service to someone else? I traverse this. These are the rocks, the glass, the lava, whatever it was. This is where I came from. How can I help
Yeah,
you
absolutely. That's beautiful.
reverse?
It makes me think about that wound from the snake, from the serpent, as your healing medicine. It just kind of hit me like, oh, that snake bite. It was kind of the bite of the serpent, but the healing that it was bringing to you is almost that the serpent was injecting you with its medicine in a way, but that was going to be something, symbolic of healing after this wound. That I'm here to make this wound, or to show you a wound, or to show you some type of uncomfortable situation, but now here's your healing medicine from it. And it was a slow burn, a slow release, and that medicine is working its way out. And it sounds like that's where you're right now, is this overall holistic healing medicine. So a lot of that all just ties together and makes so much sense.
And I just had an epiphany as you were saying that. How Chiron is the wounded healer, and his myth is, that he got wounded, and since he was the demigod, that he wasn't able to, even though he was fatally wounded, he couldn't die. Well, if you think about us as humans in a wheel that we reincarnate, if you believe in reincarnation, I believe in reincarnation, it just makes so much sense. But if we were to have a wound and not completely heal it in this lifetime, therefore we are going to create a wheel that helps us fix, or not fix, but understand that wound, so that we can evolve past it, which in turn is likely going to bring another wound that is likely going to have to, evolve us into another place. And the more that we learn to evolve from those wounds, that's when we finally start traversing off into that etheric.
It makes so much sense. So it kind of gives us the picture, or if you will, I've started using this new term when I do charts for people, and I'm still kind of working on exactly what I want to call it to capture the full essence of it. But I kind of see it as like a soul portal or a spirit portal when you're looking at a chart. And I think of that because I think of in like ancient Egypt and like different cultures from the past, they have stargates, or they had portals, and it was ways that they could basically teleport their consciousness to another place, is how we kind of understand it now. Who knows if they were really actually going to another place? I guess we don't really know. But I think of a chart, when I look at a chart and I see that wheel, just like in the TV show and the movie Stargate, it looks like a portal. And it looks like your own personal portal to the stars. So I've started using a new term, calling them portals of some type, and still working that out. It might be just a personal star portal, or a birth portal, or something like that. But it definitely looks to me like a portal, like it's showing you all the keys, like here's the keys and here's the code to your portal, your personal portal. And this will take you on your own personal journey, discovering yourself and finding out who you are, especially when you work with somebody who understands the energetics of it and can relay that information to you. So as you were talking about looking at someone's information and seeing where that Chiron is, and how that relates to their wounds. So when you're looking at a chart, how are you seeing that, or what are you looking at exactly?
Well, it's funny. You have to look at it at the one thing and then the whole thing and then the one thing and the whole thing. So I'll like I said, I'll take a look at Chiron. You know, what house is it in? What signs, what zodiac signs are there? What other planets are there? And depending on and where is that at? So say, like right now, I have a chart in front of me. Chiron happens to be in the ninth house with a bazillion other things. And you have to take into account all of that story. So it's not just, not just Chiron in Pisces right now. What is there with Chiron? Is it North Node? Is it the sun? How do those players play into that story of that wound? And then, so say, Chiron is there with Mercury and it's in Pisces. So I'm going to look at the 12th house because of Pisces. I'm going to look at Neptune because of Pisces. I'm going to look at the South Node as their karmic information from past lives. So it's looking at it here and then there and then here and there. And how does this story unfold to give us the full picture? It's one of my pet peeves with astrology right now is I'm a Pisces. Like, no, you're so much more. Yes, that sun sign might be in Pisces, but if I were to look at the sun in Pisces, what house is it in? And then you add aspects to that. And something you were saying just a few minutes ago kind of gave me a thought, and I'm going to have to play with it now. But aspects. What if the aspects on our chart are, if you're looking at it in that portal way, what if they are entry points that we have peeked our head in past lives where we got it right or where we didn't quite meet our soul's expectation?
Now that, and then when you said that, it made me start thinking like, well, maybe the aspects are almost like a path where like maybe we followed this and this was our path that we took to get to here, like which like our sun sign, which kind of represents the ego, the like who we think we are. Like maybe that path leads to that, and all of that is in there of why we think we're a certain way, and kind of backtracking through that can explain like the story of your incarnation. Like this is how you incarnate.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to play with that now since that we talked about that. Like, would you ask?
Really interesting. Another thing that I've been looking at too, and I want to get your opinion on this, is I've been trying to figure out how those aspects work in a geometric way. It kind of, because of course all of them have, there's these quincunxes and all these, different sextiles. They're all based off of that degrees of separation. So when I hear degrees, I immediately start going geometry. There's angles. And then I start looking at a chart like, okay, what shapes am I making? And I see different shapes. And that's something that the astrology uses also with, the kites and the grand cross and the triangles. And I see all of those. And have you seen anything where those shapes, a particular shape, resonates with somebody or has some type of significance with them?
Yes, only to the point that I understand aspects, which was not something that I've been taught. It's something that I've been kind of learning and picking up and studying. So I also will take that same thing where they go, when you have an aspect, you're only supposed to look at the planet here, and not say the sign or not say the angles and all of that stuff. I'm a big picture person. So if I'm looking at, say, a point that's pointing to the South Node, and then it's pointing to the moon, and it's pointing to the North Node, well, that makes up a story. But if I add the houses and I add the signs to that, then it gives depth to that.
That makes a lot of sense. Triangle. So it actually has more of a big picture behind it. Like you said, looking at that big picture, you can see it's not just this characteristic, but it actually has this tied to it and this tied to it. So that makes a lot more sense. And that's kind of what I was thinking too, with looking at a chart and seeing that geometry of it. And another thing that I'm going to have to work with somebody that's like a music theory specialist, is looking at the music of the spheres and how that works with a chart, because you can literally take somebody's chart and make it into a musical representation because the scale is there.
The vibration. There have you heard there are, I want to say it's on YouTube where I heard it, that the planets do put out different frequencies.
Yes. Yeah.
To that
It's a beautiful
sound to them. And if everything's vibration, then of course our chart has a vibration to it. And it goes back to that energetics. You know, if you look at the energetics of what calls to you, you know, I'm a little bit different in my readings than I do more like Zoom type of readings with people. I like to have the person on with me while I'm reading. I do some that are, you know, just me pinging and going, okay, this is what I see. But I think there's something about having the person on with you when you're looking at their birth chart to be able to reach into the energetics of this is who they are. And you can get that feedback, and then you can have the conversations, and then you can go down whatever they need to go down or want to do or find out, instead of just going, well, this is what I see. What do you think about this? And being that I am an energetic type of, I mean, after this many years, I don't know that I'm an expert, but I am very good at reading energy, and charts have an energy to them. So I'm with you. I would love to know how to put some type of music to that.
That's something I'm going to be working on, is trying to figure that out. And I have a few people in mind that would probably be able to work with that somehow and take the measurements from it and actually get into the details and show like, okay, see this here, this is this note, and this is this note, or this octave, or this key, or whatever, and then actually make a chord for somebody's chart and be able to play like on a piano, like here's your chart, and this is the sound of your chart, and see how that resonates, and if that has a healing effect on somebody or whatever the case may be, just to kind of know like, okay, when I play these notes for your session or whatever, this is to resonate with you and to help you connect with your primordial incarnation energy or whatever it may be. So that's kind of a route that I'm going to go down and figure that out a little bit more and see if that kind of makes sense.
I look forward to
yeah, as soon as I find out if I can get some of that work done, I will definitely let everybody know and see what it is, and if it fizzles out and turns into nothing, then so be it. Whatever.
What a fun creation though. For me, it was all about blending the Akashic work with the astrology work, and knowing, you know, that for those who don't know what Akashic is, it's the Akashic records are book of life. It's anything and everything that it ever has been or ever will be is written in the records. And when you can tap into the records, there's a plethora of information there. And it's not going in there willy-nilly. It's when you look at a person's chart, it's how does past, present, and future lives come together in this blueprint that is put on a piece of paper or on a screen, or, you know, like you said, that portal. How does that work with the evolution of that soul so that it comes here to do what it came here to do and accomplishes what it came to accomplish for the betterment of all of us? Because in all reality,
absolutely.
we're all one.
Absolutely. And so something you were just talking about, it made me think of how that blueprint actually is. And I remember I wrote something up about reincarnation and blueprints and why reincarnation made sense. But then another thing you were talking about with the Akashic records, something that makes me think of some studies I've read, other work that I've looked into, like with ions. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Ions Institute. It's the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and they're based out of California, I believe. And it was founded by a former astronaut. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but a former astronaut founded ions to study kind of these more metaphysical properties that we have. And one of the things that they've talked about, and I've heard one of them from one of their professors talk about, is how thoughts are energy. And we know that thoughts are energy because you can put a cap on somebody and put sensors on their head and measure that energy that's coming out of their head. And by changing the things they're looking at or talking about, they can measure the different things that are coming out. So that tells you that your thoughts are producing a vibration, they're producing a frequency, an energy that's actually leaving your head. Well, and if it's leaving your head, well, where's that energy going? Where is that thought going? And if we follow the laws of science and the laws of thermodynamics, we know that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So that energy, if it leaves your head, goes somewhere. And that is the argument that I use when people say the Akashic records aren't real. And I say, well, your thoughts, they're going to it. They're going somewhere. They exist somewhere. They're never going to be destroyed. So that's probably where they are. And then it kind of makes people go, well, okay, I guess that's possible. And it makes a lot of sense. So when you're doing an Akashic record reading, are you tapping into someone else's perspective of that information, or is it coming directly through you to then give to them?
Yes.
My favorite answer.
So it's funny when I go into the records, I again always have an intention. Why am I going in here? What is it that I want to? What is the outcome that I want from this? Generally, when I do just a strict Akashic reading, it's what I'm looking for, things that have impacted them from past lives in this lifetime, so that they can be aware of them and change in the way that they want to change with it. I see it when I go into the records themselves. I actually see it as a grid in the universe. It's like a golden grid that just goes on. And when I call them, their light lights up, comes to me. And then when the book opens, it becomes like a movie. I see where they were in history. I can see the landscape. I can see the people. I can see the houses or the armies, or it's like this whole movie unfolds. And I write it down, because if I don't write it down,
Yeah,
I
that makes
won't be
a lot
able
of
to
sense.
tell you what it is.
So that's super, super interesting. And I'm wondering if experiencing that, or if they are just then going based off of what your experience is. Has anyone told you if they were able to see what you were seeing, or to somehow energetically feel that also?
Yes, I've had. It's so funny. Every time I do a reading like that, I always like, oh my gosh, I'm just making this up. I'm just totally. I've lost my rocker, and I'm just giving you a great story. And they're gonna they go, oh my gosh, this and this is happening, and this is what's going on. And I've always had an affinity for it, and then it just always astonishes me. But my thought to this is, as far as you went from my perspective, I think that's why when we go to different readers, we get different perspectives. I can only give a story from my perspective. I can tap into their records, and I can pull the energetics of the things that they're wanting to know and to think about. But I'm limited by my beliefs and my experience, as any person on earth is.
That's such an important thing to keep in mind, is that we all have this different lens of perspective that we're viewing everything through. So I suppose even our own portal or our own chart has an effect on the way that we perceive things and are going to do work with somebody, because we can't help but have our lens of perspective over us when we're working with somebody.
And I think beliefs play a big part in that. I watch a lot of things on channeling and whatnot, and it's interesting to listen to those different type of stories. And the things that they say are always filtered through their beliefs, and we're drawn to people that have energetics.
Makes a lot of sense. That's kind of that like attracts like type concept. So that's really quite interesting. So have you had, I know because you've talked about dragons, I've listened to you talk about dragons. Have you had anything with dragons coming up with like an Akashic records reading?
I've not had it come through an Akashic reading. Dragons was not anything that was really on my radar. It was, I've been fascinated with dragons. They happen to be my husband's thing. He loves dragons, but it was never one of those, like, okay, dragons are cool. I like dragons. I was doing a Reiki session, and it's during Reiki. I think Reiki comes through so clear because you get in that very meditative, energetic state. And when you're very much just allowing that energy to flow through you on behalf of another person, body, energetic being, that meditative state brings in things. And that's when the dragons started coming in, was for someone else. They would be like, hey, your dragon is here. And it was like, what? And the more we learned about dimensions, it made sense that, dragons are everywhere. You look in our history, you look in folklore, in all over the world. It's not just one centralized place. Dragon lore is worldwide. And if we look at dimensions, then who's to say that there isn't a dimension that dragons
Right. And that makes so much sense, because how do we really perceive dimensions? I mean, how would we prove that anyways? So I love that tie-in, because dragons seem to be this ethereal, elevated representation of the primordial substance of energy, which is the experience that I had with dragons, was seeing them as that in this way that kind of they were everything. That was what my experience was that underlying all of it, they're kind of everything that there is, but they manifest into different forms and different ways of being, and just take on different shapes and all kinds of things. So I'm curious, what have you found them to be symbolic of or instrumental for? What has been their purpose in the times where you found someone's dragon is there? What has been their purpose, or what are they there for, or what are they doing?
Dragons to me are very much in the same realm dimension as angels. And it's my understanding, after finding many of them with many different clients, that we each have at least one personal dragon that is our dragon, just like our birth to guide, birth to death guide, or guardian angel. We have a dragon energy that comes through for us to either be a protector, to help manifest, I think they come through with different abilities depending on what that soul needs.
That's huge, because to me, I think of dragons as kind of like also what's the right word I want to use? Elevated or higher level version of the serpent. So like I think of, like there's the serpent, which is basically,
yes,
it's now you take and you add, give it wings and you give it legs, and now you've got a dragon. And it's basically a serpent with now more ability, more power, more mobility it can do. So it makes me think of, okay, so like a dragon is an elevated serpent, like it's taking that serpent energy, serpent knowledge, and bringing it to the max. And now here it is with you, and here's what it can do for you. So that's very interesting.
Right.
So some of the things that I've experienced with dragons was, I did experience that I was using some plant medicine and experienced what I refer to now as a plant medicine based near-death experience, where I felt myself leave this 3D reality and merge into the everything, and into the all, like into the ether, whatever anyone wants to call it. Became one with source, and everything was just all one thing. Our phrase that we say now after that was like, everything is everything. Like now we know everything is everything, which then means there's only one thing.
Yeah.
If everything is everything, there's only one thing. And the experience that I had was that everything, everywhere I looked, it was made up of dragons, and it looked like a mosaic of nothing but dragons, just all over the place. Everything I looked at, my hand, my arm, all I saw was just dragons. But it was like outlines of dragons everywhere. I looked at the wall, dragons. I looked at the TV and the people on the TV, dragons, just everywhere. It was the weirdest experience. And during that experience, I knew that I have left this realm of existence, merged with everything. And this is the all. This is the place of the all. And it was after that things in my life started changing, and kind of like that was like the sprouting of everything. So that's why I find that your dream experiencing the serpent, it was kind of like that seed being planted, and then here goes everything else. Because that was the same thing I experienced, except it was that serpent energy within the dragon, and it was like a launching point.
Yeah, It's so it expands the mind so much, and I think that's what it takes to, have these kinds of conversations. Is if you had asked me 10, 15 years ago if there was such a thing as dragons, well, yeah, they're a myth and they're a made up story. But again, it's the energetics. That energy never dies. And if a folklore of dragons is there, then where did that energy come from? Who touched what?
I remember the day that I heard that you were doing a podcast on dragons. I think I messaged you or I posted something. I was like, dragons keep coming up for me right now, like over and over and over and over. Dragons keep coming up. Like, what is going on? And then literally yesterday, the day before we're having this conversation, so August 5th, yesterday, right? If I'm getting my dates right. Or is today the 6th? I can't even remember now. Today's the 7th. Okay, so it's yesterday the 6th. So
actually,
I'm listening to a podcast and they're talking about Merlin, and then Merlin's giving his prophecies, and he's literally talking about dragons in his prophecy. And I was like, what are the chances that I'm listening to this and tomorrow I'm talking to the dragon lady?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Merlin. So I have a book in
Oh, wow.
in process.
Yeah, no coincidence there.
Merlin came to me, and I also teach Reiki, and I was giving a Reiki attunement, and Merlin came through. And not only did Merlin come through then, but I had 4 other instances of Merlin. So yeah, he is very much part of the dragon realm.
Wow.
That
So
energetics of
that is mind-blowing, because that's kind of what they were talking about also, is how Merlin isn't necessarily real person, flesh and body person. So kind of like the same thing you're talking about with dragons, like there's an energetics that exists with them, and that energetics is real. Because again, I hate to say this again, but energy is everything. Everything is energy. So energy exists no matter what. So even if it's not something tangible that you can hold in your hands, the energetics are real. So if the energetics of Merlin was, that's how it worked, and Merlin was an energetic or an archetype or an astral projection of an energy, that's not any less real than me or you sitting here right now in our spot. We're a dense version of energy is how I think of it. There's lighter versions of energy that can go between dimensions and go here and there and wherever, just like our thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
Once our thoughts leave our head, who knows where they go and how fast they go. So it kind of blows my mind that Merlin is energetic like that, and that makes it make so much more sense.
It's fun how it all ties together. I mean, you can talk about Reiki, you can talk about energetics, you can talk about emotion stuff, you can talk about astrology, past life. It's all one.
When you say ties in, it makes me think of aspects. Again, I kind of coming back again, aspects. It makes me think about how the aspects, when you look at a chart, how they're literally like tying together different parts of it. So it's like seeing how it all is tied together. Yeah, absolutely. Like these are all connected. So kind of back to like what you were saying is how, so many people are on this one track mind of only seeing their sun sign of this is what I am, and this is all that I am. And it's like, well, hold on. Let's look at how that connects to this and how this connects to that. And it's a big symphony of spheres and how they're placed. And we need to look at that whole chart. Again, just like the work that you do, it's a holistic approach. So there's like a holistic chart. You need to see the whole thing. So have you looked at the chart for what is being called the Lion's Gate coming up in a couple days?
I haven't, only because the energetics, again, of that, the hype of it, has nothing to do anymore of what was really there. I mean, if you look in ancient history, the sky was in a completely different place than it is right now. So get the energy that wants to be put onto it, but I don't like buying into hype. And tomorrow is important only because it's going to be here and now, you know. And you know, if I were to look at the chart, I would again want to look at the entire chart and then go, well, why am I looking at it? What is it that I'm wanting to pull from it? And if I were to do that, it would probably personalize to me because I'm looking at the chart in my perspective. And I guess if someone were to come to me and go, hey, why is this important? I could probably find something that's important in it, but it doesn't have the same meaning as it did when they were looking at it, say, in the Egyptian sky, as it does for us looking at that sky right now. So yes, 8 is important. 8 happens to be one of my most favorite numbers. It's the infinity sign. And, you know, you go down the rabbit hole of 8. Okay, well, you know, that's the 8th house. I'm going to think about Pluto. I'm going to think about transformation. Sure, that could be a, you know, do I want to transform? Okay, well, how am I going to transform? I might look at the 8th house. I might see where Pluto's at. I might look at those kind of things. But just to like put it out there and go, ooh, today's Lionsgate. Well, you know, sun just went into Leo yesterday, tomorrow, the next, it depends on what your set points are when sun really does hit into Leo. So it's not like we're in the midst of Leo. We are just got some, we've got some Cancer energy still going on there. We've still got some Leo energy going on there. You're going to have to look at those combined energies to go.
Yeah, that's kind of the breakdown that I was trying to give somebody too, is talking about how, like, okay, I see the importance of the day based off of the numerology side of it, because it's, you know, it's August 8th, it's 8/8, and then also the year is an 8 when you total that up. So it's like it's an 888 day, which is kind of cool. And then looking at where the sun is going, like, yes, okay, the sun is, maybe you can say the sun's entering the gate of Leo, like it's at the gate, about to go into it, but not quite. And that's really the only connection that I can bring to it being a Lion's Gate. But otherwise, the energetics of the actual numerology of the day, yeah, I can see how that is significant, but it doesn't really have any significance with Leo necessarily, unless again you tie it into it's entering the gate of Leo and about to go into it. And now those energetics maybe are going to be brought into this time period that we're going into, maybe, perhaps. But yeah, it's again, it's an example to me, an example of how people are not using the correct positions of things in the sky. It's another example of you're using stuff that's over 2,000 years old in a sky that is no longer that. And to me, that just doesn't make sense, especially when you want to get into it scientifically and say that if astrology is real, that it's the energetics that are going on with the planet in that sign. But if the planet's not in that sign, as someone says it is, how can it have the energetics of that sign? It's just, the two don't add up. And that's kind of been my position coming from like an astronomy and physics background of being, well, if it's not there, how is it producing that energy? Like, it's producing the energy of where it's at, isn't it? If it's in Cancer, if we look and we see, oh, the sun's in Cancer, well, how is it producing and giving us the energy of Gemini? It just doesn't line up. And that's something that I think more people will become aware of. I think it's happening, and some people are resistant to it, which I understand. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because I find also that people that more stick to the tropical or Western astrology tend to be, again, focused on that sun sign, and that of course is going to be more about the self and the ego and identification and attachment to one particular aspect. So if there's already kind of that going on, it's going to be more difficult to look outside of that and see something that doesn't necessarily line up with what you believed and embodied for so long. And that can be challenging. I understand that.
Right. I know I tell people when they're like, don't tell me my sun sign's changed. I'm like, let's look at the big picture and you tell me if I'm pinpointing the essence of you better than it has been. And they're like, okay, I'm still not changing my sun. You don't have to.
I think there's a lot more to us. And I've had that experience with lots of people where I'll just find out a little bit about them, and I'll ask them like just the simplest question. I've done it to a few people like on Facebook, and I say, "Hey, were you born in the wintertime during this?" And they'll be like, "What? Yeah, absolutely." And they're like, "Oh, I can tell. Like I can tell just because of how you are that this is probably part of your chart. Like I may not know the rest of it, but I can tell a big part because you express yourself this way or you say these type of things. Like I can see that you have this somewhere." And and it's just so easy to tell sometimes. And that's usually where the conversation starts, and they go like, "How did you pick that up?" And I say, "Well, it's because blah, 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 this." And then I go into, "Let's pull up your chart." And then I pull it up and they're like, "Wait, no, that's not my chart." And I go, actually,
this is a good representation of what the sky looks like.
Yeah. So then I started telling people like, this is your birth sky map. And they're like, birth sky map? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, it's a map of the sky when you were born. It's your birth sky map. Like this is showing where you came from essentially. And it ends up getting really interesting because then some people just completely reject it. And then other people completely embrace it. And I haven't found an in between. I haven't found anybody that's like, I don't know, maybe I found either the complete resistance, like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm going to use my tropical still. I'm going to stick with that. And then I found other people who are like, oh, so tropical is just a bunch of lies. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, at one time it was relevant, but just not anymore.
Yeah, there's still, I can understand how tropical astrology is still relevant to many situations in looking at the equinoxes and whatnot. But if you want the big picture, and if you want to understand, the way I put it, you have the karmic wheel of the 12 signs, or you have the energetic wheel of how to get off of that karmic wheel with Ophiuchus. And if you're going to look to expand your soul to a place that points to the galactic center, why not include that in and look at the actual,
the real energetics that we have now. I think it's very significant. I think that the more people are talking about it and the more people that actually get into astrology, because I can't believe how many people have all of a sudden started looking into astrology and going to work with an astrologer. It's been kind of weird to see. Like, I hate to say it, but it seems like since COVID, it kind of made people internalize a little bit and kind of turn inwards for themselves, is what I've noticed. And when that happened, it seems like people became more interested in figuring out more about themselves, and that automatically kind of leads you there.
I think that's why there's also research of dragon energy, because for the longest times, dragons were depicted as these things that you had to go slay, the things that had to be conquered. And in truth, it's an energy that is not going to ever be conquered. It's an energy that you get to aspire to. Humanity is in this awakening stage of waking back up to the reality that we are more than ... We're more than our sun sign. We're more than these flesh and bone bodies. We're more than just me or you. We are more than in that whole ascension process.
I love that, because it also makes me think of something that I actually discussed on a few days ago with Ike, and we were talking about how there's this innate sense of fear and like trepidation that people get when they think of certain things, one of them being snakes. And I think of that as because it seems like serpent energy brings truth and enlightenment and wisdom and just knowledge. And when that happens, when you're hit with truth and wisdom, it breaks down old beliefs. So there's a fear that people have of shedding the old and becoming the new. And that's everything that the serpent energy represents, is shed the old, take on the new knowledge, new wisdom, and kind of rising up that energy. It's so symbolic in so many different ways that I
I was going to say, when I started working with the Chiron, I was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months in and really meditating hard on it. And I started channeling, and I wrote 4 pages of download on the whole serpent energy, why the serpent was villainized in the Bible, and the truth of where that came from, and wasn't the villain at all. The whole representation, if you look at Native American, snake represents rebirth. And if you look at biblical, Jesus represents rebirth.
Yeah, right.
Again.
Right.
So the energies, the villainization of the snake, I think, was we fear what we don't understand. But if we take the time to understand it, then it becomes powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, whatever we can embody will empower us. Absolutely. That is so great. So great. So many things that it got my gears spinning that I'm gonna have to go back and think about, and probably go back and listen to this again and just like, wait, what was that? I got to take some notes so I can actually listen to it and learn, because anytime I think that people are talking about serpent energy, and whenever Ophiuchus comes up, it seems like the conversation always takes another level, and it's like it makes things grow again, things that I had never thought about, things that just weren't even in my realm of thought, that go, hey, look over here, check this out. And I feel like that just keeps happening every time I talk with somebody about this serpent energy or Ophiuchus or just all these different things. It just seems to be opening up more and more and more and more, blossoming like a lotus in my life. So it's just great to be able to have these conversations and talk about this type of stuff, and really just develop this overall holistic big picture idea of kind of what's going on with all these energetics. So that's just so amazing. So what I'd like for you to do is, if you can share with us some of the places that people can find you and that want to work with you, and what those would be. So just go ahead and drop your links or drop your plugs, whatever you want to do, and I'll make sure they'll be in the show notes so you guys can check them out too. So
awesome. So first, my website is just my name, Brenda Martinez. Martinez. That kind of gives a breakdown of all the things that I offer, with the exception of my discovery session and the my discovery session. It's a combination of everything I do.
Okay.
And then Facebook is probably my most prominent place that you can find me. Name Brenda Martinez, or Soul Deep Life is my business name. I also have a page called Soul Deep Life there. I also have an astrology page, Ophiuchus 13 Astrology. I do a lot there, doing those, a lot of just things that I come up with. I like promoting other people on there, and just anything that can get this message out there, because I think the more that we can learn about this 13th sign and this new form of astrology that is actually a very old form of astrology, I love putting that knowledge out there. And then I have just recently dipped my toe into TikTok, and I'm also Ophiuchus 13 Astrology on there, doing some videos and that kind of stuff. My reserved self, the part of me that just doesn't like to pop on camera, you may not know that right now. My Chiron happens to be in my 3rd house, so the whole communication thing is one of those things I'm learning to overcome and getting better at it all the time. So yeah, those are probably the main places to find Facebook, website, and now TikTok.
Nice. I've been seeing those TikToks. I love the hiking videos. It's great. It's, connecting out in nature there and doing it that way. That's the place to be. I love it.
Recently moved to the mountains in Colorado and just had a Buena Vista is the mountains.
That's great.
Yeah. And yeah, it's
I'm jealous. I'm down here scorching in Phoenix, so it's nice and hot. So
he needs the winters.
oh yeah, absolutely beautiful. That's my time to get out and go hiking. But in the summer, it's in the pool. In the pool or under the misters, that's the only way to be outside. Otherwise, we're sheltered inside like lizards in a hole. When we first came here, we saw people in the wintertime that were wearing, boots and jackets and scarves and stocking hats. And here we are. We're from, the great cold of Minnesota. We came down here just before winter started. So we're seeing people and it's, 60 degrees all dressed up like it's cold winter. And we're wearing shorts and t-shirts. We're going, what is going on here? And now this will be,
Now you understand.
yeah, this will be our 6th winter here coming up this year. And now I get it. Once it gets below 70, it kind of feels a little chilly. Yeah. And I've gone, whoa. Well, I'm used to winter never going above 20 degrees. But now it's, oh, yeah. I think this past year was actually one of the coldest winters for us. And one of the days I remember my pool, because I do cold plunges, and before I got into my pool, I checked the temperature and it was like 34 degrees on the pool thermometer. I was like, that's the coldest I've ever seen my pool. I think this year before that, the coldest I ever saw it get to was like 42 degrees. So we're starting to get a little bit of a cold in the winter. So it kind of felt, we had some frozen like dew on top of the hot tub one morning. I was like, it's actually cold. Like, wow, okay, there's some ice filled up. The water froze. Like, wow. The day when it was that cold, when I got out of the pool and dried off after the 34-degree cold plunge that I did, I'm drying off. And as I'm drying off, like the water specks coming off of me were freezing in the air. It was the most intense cold plunge I've ever done. It was worth it. It makes a big difference. Yeah.
I understand a bit.
Yeah. They definitely help a lot. It helps me to connect with the breath because that's all I can focus on is the breath. So yeah. But yeah. Excellent. So definitely if you're open to it, definitely want to do this again. Like we'll get more into some stuff a little bit deeper. Maybe pull up a chart and go over a chart or something, but I think that'd be great. So definitely was like, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope to have more people on and maybe even some recurring people coming on and let's do an update or, let's pull somebody else's chart or bring somebody in and whatever the case may be. So we'll see kind of how things unfold and where it goes. And right now, just kind of planting seeds and hopefully they sprout into something beautiful that everybody can appreciate and learn from. So the more people I have that are like you, that are sharing this wonderful information, that have the experiences that you've had, the better I think it will be for everybody in the long run. So just, yeah, I appreciate you coming on and taking your time, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So just thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, and we'll definitely be in touch here. So thank you again.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. And we'll do. You too.
All right.
All right. Bye. I don't know about you, but I feel uplifted and inspired after having this conversation with Brenda. She brings so much clarity and good energy to a conversation, and it's just kind of infectious. And I felt that the whole time speaking with her. I hope that you see how much value there is in her work. Please reach out to her to book a session, get a reading, or just have a conversation with her, because she truly does have gifts to share with the world. It's my intention to bring you a new person or piece of information every week that helps you on your journey to self-discovery and healing. I'm so very grateful for the opportunity I have to share this time with you, and I hope that you'll be here next week to join me in another conversation here on Pluto and Capricorn.